You've never heard this story. Not really. You've heard whispers about soldiers who don't come back, about missions that never existed, about files burned before they were written. But you haven't heard the one where the rescue target and the rescuer share the same heartbeat, where the person you're ordered to save is looking at you through your own younger eyes. This isn't a theory. This isn't a time travel fantasy. This is a debriefing that was never supposed to be spoken aloud. I'm the one who lived it twice. And I'm only telling you now because the timeline we fixed is the one where you forget me. So listen close, because by the time this ends, you won't remember my name. But you'll feel it. You'll feel all of it. The rain hit the tarmac like spent shell casings. I remember that first. The sound. A constant, percussive drumming that made the world feel smaller than it was. We were standing in the shadow of a C-130 that had no serial number, no country insignia, nothing but gray paint, and the kind of silence that military vehicles get when they've been scrubbed from every ledger. My boots were wet. My gear was heavy. And my gut was screaming something I couldn't translate yet. Sergeant First Class Maya Chun stood to my left, adjusting the strap on her carbine. She had a habit of chewing the inside of her cheek when she was processing tactical data, and right now her jaw was working like she was trying to grind diamonds out her molars. Specialist Darnell Dare Washington was on my right, checking his watch for the fifth time in 30 seconds, his usual grin conspicuously absent. Behind us, Corporalina Petrov was running a final diagnostic on the portable signal jammer strapped to her back, muttering Russian profanities under her breath because she said English didn't have the right consonants for true frustration. 4 of us. That was the team. No backups, no air support, no extraction except the one we'd walk out on our own 2 feet. The mission briefing had lasted 11 minutes. That should have been my first red flag. In my 12 years of special operations, I'd never had a briefing that short unless someone was trying to keep me from asking questions. The officer who gave it didn't have a name tag, didn't have rank insignia. He was just a man in a black polo shirt with the kind of eyes that had seen too many things he couldn't unsee. Target is a single civilian, he'd said, sliding a photo across the table. Last known location is a subterranean facility in the Urals here. A red dot on a satellite image. No roads, no landmarks, just snow and rock and the kind of coordinates that don't appear on any public map. Your job is insertion, extraction, and exfiltration. No engagement unless absolutely necessary. You bring this person out alive, or you don't come out at all. I picked up the photo, and my entire world tilted sideways. The face looking back at me was mine. Not a twin, not a doppelganger, not some elaborate psychological trick. It was me, younger, softer around the edges. The jawline less sharp, the eyes less haunted. But the same small scar on the left eyebrow from a bike accident when I was 9. The same crooked smile that I trained myself out of because smiling made you look weak in interrogation scenarios. The same birthmark behind the left ear that only my mother and my barber had ever seen. I looked up at the man in the black polo. Explain. I can't. You will. He didn't flinch. That was impressive. Most people flinched when I used that tone. What you need to know is that the person in that photograph exists in a timeline that is no longer active. They are a remnant, a ghost, but they are also the key to preventing an event that hasn't happened yet. Get them out. Everything else is noise. I wanted to throw the table at him. I wanted to demand names, dates, scientific principles, anything that would make this make sense. Instead, I did what I'd always done. I compartmentalized. I locked the screaming part of my brain in a mental box and handed the key to the soldier who had survived 37 combat missions without losing a single team member. What's the threat assessment? Unknown. But the facility is operated by a private military contractor called Prometheus Solutions. You've encountered them before. I had, 2 years ago in the Caucasus. A black site prison where Prometheus had been running experiments on something they called chrono-anchoring. I'd blown the facility and extracted 6 prisoners, but I never learned what the experiments were actually for. The files were encrypted with something my tech people said didn't exist yet. Anyone else know about this? The man in the polo smiled. It was not a kind smile. You're the only person in this reality who can look at that photo and feel what you're feeling right now. That's not a coincidence. That's why you were chosen. He left the room. The door clicked shut, and I sat there for a full 60 seconds, staring at my own younger face, trying to remember if I'd ever been that innocent. I hadn't. Even then, I'd already seen things. But The girl in the photo didn't know that yet. She was about to find out. Now, standing on a rain-slicked tarmac with my team, I could feel the weight of that photo pressing against my chest plate. I'd memorized every detail. The way my younger self held her shoulders, still confident, but not yet armored. The way her eyes held hope instead of assessment. She didn't know what was coming for her. She didn't know that in 3 years, she'd be standing in the rain with a carbine and a secret that could shatter reality. Captain, Maya's voice cut through the drumming rain. You've been staring at the horizon for 4 minutes. That's not like you. I blinked, shook the rain off my face. Just running the insertion math. Bull. Dare stepped closer, his voice low enough that only the team could hear. You've been different since the briefing. We've all seen it. You're not sleeping. You're not eating. And you keep looking at that photo like it owes you money. I could have lied. I could have pulled rank and shut down the conversation. But that wasn't how we worked. This team had bled together, buried friends together, and once, memorably, gotten hopelessly lost in a Budapest sewer together. Secrets got people killed, and I was already keeping the biggest secret of my life. The target, I said slowly, is me. Silence. The rain filled it. Lena stopped muttering. Dare's watch beeped, and he didn't look at it. Maya's jaw stopped moving. 3 sets of eyes locked onto me, with expressions ranging from confusion to concern to the kind of calm calculation that special operators develop when they hear something that should be impossible. Defy me, Maya said finally. Genetically, physically, historically identical. Same scars, same memories up to a point, same blood type, same fingerprints, same dental records. I pulled out the photo and held it up. This is me 3 years ago, before the Caucasus, before Prometheus, before I knew that timelines could be wiped. Lena was the first to speak. That's not possible. Neither was the Budapest sewer map, but we navigated it anyway. That's different, Lena insisted. Sewers are real. This is she stopped, searching for the right word in English, then switched to Russian out of frustration. It's madness. Dare translated, because he was the only one of us who'd bothered to learn more than curse words. But madness is kind of our job, isn't it? Maya was still staring at the photo. If this is you from a wiped timeline, what happens if we extract her? Does she replace you? Do you disappear? Do we all forget we ever knew you? That was the question I'd been avoiding. The one that had kept me awake for 3 nights straight, staring at the ceiling of my barracks room, running scenario after scenario through my head. The briefing officer hadn't answered it. The file hadn't addressed it. And somewhere deep in my gut, I knew that was because the answer was too terrible to put in writing. I don't know, I admitted. But I know what happens if we don't go. Prometheus is running another experiment in that facility. The same experiment that wiped the timeline in the first place. If we don't stop it, it doesn't just erase the past. It rewrites the present. Everything we've done, everyone we've saved, it all becomes something else. Lena crossed herself. I'd never seen her do that before. And if we do stop it, then I don't know that either. I tucked the photo back into my chest rig. But I know one thing. That girl in there, my younger self, she doesn't deserve to die in a Prometheus lab. She doesn't deserve to be erased. She deserves the same chance we give every other extraction target. Dare nodded slowly. So we're doing this. We're doing this. Maya looked at me for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She reached out and squeezed my shoulder. Then we better move. Because if you're going to disappear, I want to make sure you disappear doing something worth remembering. We loaded into the transport vehicle. The rain followed us. The facility was buried 200 meters beneath a mountain that didn't appear on any topographic map. Our insertion point was a service tunnel that had been abandoned since the Soviet era, discovered by a geological survey satellite that Prometheus didn't know we'd hacked. The entrance was a rusted metal hatch half hidden by boulders and decades of frozen soil. Dare popped the seal with a hydraulic spreader, and the smell that rolled out was ancient, diesel fumes, decay, and something else. Something metallic and sharp like the air after a lightning strike. Radiation, Maya asked, checking her dosimeter. Negative, Lena said. But something's wrong. The electromagnetic signature is spiking. Not natural. Not military either. I keep my calm defined, not military. Lena hesitated. It's like nothing I've ever seen. The waveform is repeating, but each repetition is slightly different. almost like it's learning. That sent a chill down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold. Learning waveforms meant adaptive systems. Adaptive systems meant artificial intelligence. And AI in a black site facility run by a company that experimented with time manipulation was not a comforting combination. Stay sharp, I said. We go silent from here. Hand signals only. Petrov, you're on rear guard. Washington, you got point. Chun, you're with me. We move fast, we move quiet, and we do not engage unless I give the order. Dare slipped through the hatch first, his carbine up, and his movements fluid despite the weight of his gear. I followed, then Maya, then Lena. The tunnel swallowed us whole. The first thing I noticed was the temperature. It should have been cold, permafrost cold, but instead it was warm, almost hot, and getting hotter the deeper we went. Sweat beaded on my forehead and dripped into my eyes, mixing with the rain still clinging to my face. The walls were rough-hewn rock, but every 50 meters or so we passed a steel reinforcement beam stamped with a serial number and a date. The dates were all the same. 1973, the year the tunnel was supposedly abandoned. But the beams didn't look 40 years old. They looked new. Brand new. In fact, with no rust and no wear. And the serial numbers weren't sequential. They were random. No pattern. No logic. Just numbers that jumped from 882 to 3 to 14,759. Captain, Dare whispered, pointing at one of the beams. This doesn't make sense. Nothing about this makes sense, I whispered back. Keep moving. We walked for 20 minutes. The tunnel sloped steadily downward, and the air grew thicker, heavier, until it felt like breathing through wet cotton. My ears popped twice from the pressure change. Maya was checking her compass every few steps, her frown deepening each time she looked at it. The needle's spinning, she said finally, holding up the compass. There's something down here that's messing with magnetic fields. Prometheus tech, I said. Stay close. Visual contact only. The tunnel ended in a heavy blast door. No handed, no kpath, just a smooth metal surface that looked like it had been poured into place rather than welded. Dare ran his fingers over the surface, then stepped back and shook his head. No seams. No hinges. This isn't a door. It's a plug. Lena pushed past him and pressed her palm against the metal. Her eyes went distant for a moment, the way they always did when she was running calculations in her head, and then she pulled a small device from her pack and held it against the surface. The device beeped twice and went dark. It's keyed to a specific biosignature, she said. Heart rate, body temperature, neural activity, and something else. Something I can't identify. It's like the door is reading. I don't know how to say this. It's reading the person's timeline. I looked at the door. Then I looked at my team. Then I looked at the photo in my chest rig, though I couldn't see it through the fabric. Step back, I said. I pressed my palm against the metal. The door opened. No sound. No grinding gears or hydraulic hiss. Just a silent parting of the metal, like water flowing around a stone. Beyond it was a corridor lit with pale blue light. The walls lined with glass panels that showed something. Images, maybe, or memories. I couldn't tell. The panels flickered too fast for my eyes to track, but my brain caught fragments. A birthday cake, a boot camp graduation, a face I loved once, whose name I'd made myself forget. Captain, Maya breathed. Your hand. I looked down. The skin of my palm was glowing. Not burning, not hurting, just glowing with the same pale blue light as the corridor, as if the door had marked me somehow, as if it recognized me, because it did. It recognized the person I used to be, the person I was about to rescue. We need to move faster, I said. They know we're here now. We ran. The corridor twisted and turned, branching into side passages that led to rooms filled with equipment I couldn't identify, machines that hummed with the same metallic sharp energy I'd smelled at the entrance, cables that pulsed with light like veins, screens that displayed data, and symbols I'd never seen before. Prometheus wasn't just experimenting with time. They were building something big enough to require a facility this deep, this hidden, this heavily defended. But there were no guards, no security personnel, no automated turrets or motion sensors. That should have been a relief. Instead, it was the most terrifying thing I'd encountered yet. Where is everyone? Dare asked, voicing the question we were all thinking. Maybe they don't need guards, Maya said. Maybe whatever's down here is the guard. We reached a second blast door. This one was smaller, more personal, like the entrance to a cell. And it was already open. Inside was a room. White walls, white floor, a single chair in the center bolted to the ground. And sitting in the chair, wrists bound with restraints that glowed faintly blue, was the girl from the photo. She was younger, so much younger. Her hair was shorter, her face fuller, her eyes wider, and, wet with tears she was trying not to shed. She wore a gray jumpsuit with no insignia, and her bare feet were purple with cold. When she saw me, her entire body went rigid. "You're real," she whispered. I knelt in front of her. My hands were shaking. I couldn't stop them. "I'm real. I've been seeing you for days. In my dreams. In the walls. Every time I close my eyes, you're there. And now you're here." She leaned forward, her restraints pulling taut. "Who are you? How do you answer that question? How do you tell a younger version of yourself that you're the same person, just harder and more broken and carrying memories she hasn't made yet? How do you explain that the reason she's in this chair is because of choices you haven't even made?" I reached out and touched her face. Her skin was warm despite the cold. "Alive. Real. I'm you," I said. "In about 3 years. And I'm getting you out of here." Her tears finally fell. I knew it. I knew I wasn't crazy. "You're not crazy," I said. "But we don't have much time. Prometheus knows we're here, and whatever they're building in this facility is about to come online. We need to move. Now." Maya was already cutting the restraints with a plasma torch, her movements efficient and precise. Dare had moved to the doorway, his carbine up, scanning the corridor. Lena was setting charges on the walls. Not to blow anything up, she explained, but to create interference patterns that would scramble Prometheus's tracking systems. The younger version of me, I needed a name for her, something to separate us in my head, watched all of this with an expression I recognized. It was the same expression I'd worn on my first mission. Fear, yes, but also wonder. And underneath that, a steel core that hadn't been tempered yet, but was already present. "You have a team," she said. "I have a family," I corrected. "And right now, that family is risking everything to save you. So when we start moving, you do exactly what I say. You don't ask questions. You don't hesitate. You just move. Understand?" She nodded. "Like you train me." I froze. "What?" "In my dreams. You train me. You show me what to do. How to move. How to fight." I didn't understand it then, but I understand it now. She looked at my carbine, my armor, the scars on my knuckles. "You were teaching me to survive this." I had no memory of those dreams. But as I looked into her eyes, my eyes, I realized something that made my stomach drop. If I succeeded in this mission, if I extracted her and stopped the Prometheus experiment, then the timeline that created me might never happen. I might never exist. But she would, and she would remember this moment. She would remember me. That was enough. "Let's go," I said. We moved. The extraction should have been simple. Get in, get the target, get out. But nothing about this mission was simple, and the universe seemed determined to prove that point with extreme prejudice. We made it 3 corridors before the first wave hit. Not soldiers, not drones, something else. Something that moved like smoke and hit like a freight train. It came through the walls, literally through the walls, phasing through the concrete like it wasn't there, and slammed into Dare before any of us could react. He went flying backward, his carbine clattering across the floor, and landed in a heap against the far wall. "Contact!" Maya shouted, already firing. Her rounds passed right through the thing. It was human-shaped, but not human, a shifting mass of dark gray that absorbed light instead of reflecting it. No face, no features, just a void in the shape of a man, with hands that left scorch marks on the walls wherever they touched. Lena grabbed Dare and dragged him behind a support pillar. He's alive. Armor took most of it, but I don't know how many more hits he can take. I shoved my younger self behind me and raised my carbine. Standard rounds weren't working, but I had a few surprises in my loadout. The briefing officer had given me 3 magazines with blue-tipped rounds and no explanation. For emergencies, he'd said, you'll know when to use them. This felt like an emergency. I swapped magazines, aimed at the center of the Void Thing's mass, and pulled the trigger. The round hit with a sound like tearing fabric. The Void Thing screamed, a horrible, metallic shriek that made my teeth ache, and collapsing on itself, dissolving into a puddle of black sludge that steamed on the floor. What the hell was that? Maya demanded. I don't know, I said. But I only have 2 more magazines. We need to move faster. Dare was on his feet, wincing but functional. I'm good. Bruised ribs. Maybe a cracked one. Nothing's bleeding internally. He picked up his carbine and checked the action. What the hell are we dealing with here, Captain? I looked at my younger self. She was pale, but standing, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. She wasn't running. She wasn't screaming. She was watching and learning just like I taught her. Timeline defense mechanisms, I said. Prometheus isn't just experimenting on time. They're weaponizing it. Those things, they're what happens when a timeline tries to protect itself from being altered. They're immune to conventional weapons because they're not made of matter. They're made of probability. Lena's eyes went wide. That's not possible. Probability doesn't have mass. It does when you collapse it wrong. I tapped the blue-tipped magazine. These rounds are keyed to a specific timeline, the one we're trying to preserve. When they hit a probability construct, they force it to resolve into a single outcome. In this case, death. And when we run out of rounds? Maya asked. Then we get creative. We ran. The corridors twisted and changed as we moved, as if the facility itself was rearranging itself to slow us down. Doors appeared where there had been walls. Walls appeared where there had been doors. The pale blue light flickered and shifted, sometimes casting shadows that moved on their own. My younger self stayed close to me, matching my pace even though her bare feet were bleeding on the cold floor. I wanted to carry her. I wanted to wrap her in my jacket and tell her everything would be okay. But I couldn't. I was the captain. I had to lead. What's your name? She asked as we ran. Captain Reyes, I said. No, your real name. I hesitated. My real name was something I'd buried years ago, along with my civilian clothes and my hope for a normal life. But she deserved to know. She was me. Alex, I said. Alexandra. But everyone calls me Reyes. Alex, she repeated, as if tasting the word. That's a good name. I never liked my full name. Neither did I. That's why I stopped using it. We reached a junction. 3 corridors, each one identical. No markings, no clues, no way to know which one led to the surface. Maya checked her compass again. The needle was spinning so fast, it was almost humming. Compass is useless, she said. Petrov, can you get a signal? Lena pulled out her jammer and ran a diagnostic. Nothing. Whatever's powering this facility is broadcasting on every frequency simultaneously. It's like trying to hear a whisper in a hurricane. I closed my eyes. The blue light pressed against my lids, warm and insistent. And beneath it, I felt something else. A pull. A direction. Not magnetic. Not electrical. Something deeper. Something that resonated with the glow still faintly visible on my palm. This way, I said, pointing to the left corridor. How do you know? Dare asked. Because the door marked me. It connected me to this place. I can feel where we need to go. We took the left corridor, and for a few minutes it worked. The walls stopped shifting. The blue light steadied. I could almost believe we were going to make it. Then, the second wave hit. 3 void things this time. They emerged from the floor, the ceiling, the walls, phasing through the concrete like it was water, and surrounded us before we could form a defensive perimeter. Maya fired first, her blue-tipped rounds taking down one of them, but the other 2 kept coming. Dare engaged the second, but his shot went wide, and the void thing slammed into him again, sending him crashing into Lena. They went down in a tangle of limbs and equipment. I had 1 magazine left. 1 shot at this. Cover your ears, I shouted. My younger self clamped her hands over her ears. Maya did the same. I aimed at the space between the 2 remaining void things, calculated the ricochet angle in the half-second I had, and fired. The blue-tipped round hit the wall, split into 2 fragments, and embedded itself in both void things simultaneously. They screamed in unison, that same horrible metallic shriek, and dissolved in a steaming black sludge. Silence. Then, Lena groaned from under Dare. I felt that in my fillings. Dare pushed himself up, wincing. 2 ribs this time. Definitely cracked. He looked at me. You're out of rounds, aren't you? I'm out of rounds. Maya helped Lena to her feet. Then we'd better hope there aren't any more of those things between us and the exit. There were. We encountered 3 more void things before we reached the main chamber. Each time, we had to improvise. Maya used a fragmentation grenade to collapse a ceiling on one. The falling concrete disrupted its form long enough for us to run past. Lena jury-rigged her jammer to emit a frequency that seemed to confuse another, though she couldn't explain why it worked. And Dare, in a moment of pure insanity, threw his empty carbine at the third one and somehow hit it in exactly the right spot to make it flicker out of existence. "Don't ask," he said when I stared at him. "I'm not explaining it. It worked. Let's go." The main chamber was enormous, at least 100 meters across, with a ceiling that disappeared into darkness above. And at its center, suspended in midair by cables and light and something that looked like pure mathematics given form, was the machine. It was beautiful. I'll give Prometheus that. The machine was beautiful in the way that a nuclear explosion is beautiful, terrible, and awe-inspiring, and fundamentally wrong. It pulsed with the same blue light as the corridors, but deeper, richer, like the color of a bruise on the skin of reality. And it was humming. Not a mechanical hum, a harmonic hum, a chord that resonated in my chest and made my teeth buzz. "That's it," my younger self whispered. "That's what they've been building. That's what they used me for." "Used you how?" I asked. "They needed a template. Someone whose timeline hadn't fully solidified yet. Someone who could be adjusted, modified, used as an anchor point for their experiments." She looked at me, and her eyes were older now. Not 3 years older, a lifetime older. They were trying to create a timeline that they could control, one where Prometheus always wins. And I was the key. I looked at the machine. Then I looked at my team, bloody, exhausted, running on adrenaline and stubbornness. And I made a decision that would haunt me for the rest of my life, however long that turned out to be. "We can't just extract her," I said. "We have to destroy the machine." Maya's head snapped toward me. "That's not the mission. The mission was to prevent the event that wiped the timeline. This machine is that event. If we leave it intact, Prometheus just builds another anchor. Another version of her. Another version of me. It never ends. And if we destroy it," Lena asked quietly. I looked at my younger self. She was watching me with an expression I knew too well. It was the expression I wore every time I had to make an impossible choice. The expression that said I've already accepted the cost. "If we destroy it," I said, "then the timeline stabilizes. The version of me that exists right now, the captain, the soldier, the person standing here, might not survive, because I was created by the instability. I'm a product of the very thing we're trying to stop." Dare stepped forward. "If I might not survive, I might cease to exist, or I might just change, become someone else, someone who never went on this mission, someone who never knew any of you." The silence that followed was the heaviest thing I'd ever experienced. Heavier than the gear, heavier than the guilt, heavier than the weight of every life I'd taken and every life I'd saved. Maya broke it first. "Then we'd better make sure this is worth it." She didn't say goodbye. None of them did. That wasn't how we worked. Instead, they spread out around the chamber, planting charges on the machine's support structures, cutting cables, disabling the systems that kept it stable. Lena found a control panel and started rerouting power. Dare provided Overwatch, his sidearm, the only weapon he had left, trained on the entrance. And Maya worked beside me, silent and efficient, her hands steady even though I could see the tension in her shoulders. My younger self stayed close to me. She didn't help with the demolition. She just watched, and learned, and memorized. "You're going to forget this," I said as I planted the last charge. "When the timeline stabilizes, you won't remember any of this. You won't remember me. I know, but you'll remember the training, the dreams, the instincts I gave you." She nodded. "I'll remember enough." I stopped working and looked at her, really looked at her, at the girl I used to be, at the person I was sacrificing myself to save. And I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. "When you wake up," I said, "when this is all over and you're back in your life, don't run from the hard choices. Don't hide from the pain. It's the pain that makes you strong. It's the hard choices that make you worth following." "Is that what you did?" I smiled. It felt strange on my face. I did my best. It was enough. Lena's voice came over the comm. "Charges are set. Power reroute is complete. We have about 90 seconds before the machine cycles into its next phase. After that, I can't guarantee we'll be able to trigger the demolition." I looked at my team. Everyone to the extraction point. "Now, what about you?" Dare asked. "I'll trigger the charges from here. Make sure they go off. Maya grabbed my arm. That's a suicide mission, and you know it. It's a necessary one. The charges need a manual trigger. The machine's electromagnetic field is too strong for remote detonation. I pulled my arm free. Go. Get her out. That's an order. They didn't want to go. I could see it in their eyes. The protest, the refusal, the desperate need to find another way. But they were soldiers, and soldiers follow orders. Maya went first, pulling my younger self toward the exit. Dare followed, limping but moving. Lena paused at the door, looked back at me, and said something in Russian I didn't understand. Then they were gone, and I was alone with the machine. The machine pulsed faster now, the blue light strobing like a heartbeat in cardiac arrest. I could feel the timeline shifting around me, reality bending and flexing like a muscle about to tear. My palm glowed brighter, the mark from the door responding to whatever energy was building in the chamber. I had 60 seconds, maybe less. I moved to the center of the chamber, directly beneath the machine. The charges were placed at key structural points. Lena had calculated the angles, the blast radii, the cascade effect that would bring the whole thing down. All I had to do was press the detonator. But my hand wouldn't move. Not because I was scared. I'd made peace with dying years ago. Every soldier does. It's not death that freezes you. It's the unfinished business. The words you didn't say. The people you didn't hug long enough. The life you didn't live because you were too busy surviving. I thought about my team, about the late nights in the barracks, playing cards, and lying about our pasts. About the missions where we laughed in the face of death, because crying would have been worse. About Maya's dry humor, Dare's infectious optimism, Lena's fierce loyalty. They were my family. The only family I'd ever chosen. And I thought about my younger self, about the life she would have now. A life without Prometheus, without the experiments, without the nightmares that had haunted me for 3 years. She would still face challenges. The world didn't become kind just because one timeline was fixed. But she would face them as herself. Unbroken, unaltered, whole. That was worth it. That was worth everything. I pressed the detonator. The explosion was silent. That was the strangest part. The charges went off, the machine collapsed, and the blue light vanished, but there was no sound. No roar of fire, no crash of debris, no scream of twisting metal. Just silence. And then white. Pure, endless white. I floated in it for a while. Or maybe it was an instant. Time didn't mean anything anymore. I couldn't feel my body. Couldn't feel the cold or the heat or the weight of my gear. I was just awareness. A consciousness without a home. And then I heard a voice. Alex. It was my voice. But not mine. Younger. Softer. I tried to speak. Nothing came out. You did it, the voice said. You saved me. You saved everyone. I wanted to ask if I was dead. If this was the end. If I would disappear now, dissolving into the fixed timeline like morning frost and sunlight. You're not dead, the voice said, answering the question I hadn't asked. But you're not the same either. The timeline is stable now. Prometheus is gone. Their experiments, their machine, their false futures, all of it erased. But you were part of that machine, Alex. You were created by it. And when it fell, you fell with it. I felt a flicker of something. Grief, maybe. Or relief. Hard to tell when you don't have a body. But I remembered you, the voice continued. I wasn't supposed to. The timeline was supposed to wipe you from my memory completely. But I held on. I held on to the dreams, the training, the feeling of your hand on my face. I held on because you were me, and I refused to forget myself. The white began to fade. Shapes formed in the distance. Colors. Sounds. The drip of water, the rumble of distant machinery, the smell of rain and concrete. You gave me a choice, Alex. You said don't run from the hard choices. So I made one. I chose to remember. And because I remembered, I was able to find you. The shapes became clearer. A corridor. Pale blue light, fainter now, dying. And standing in front of me, her bare feet still bleeding, her gray jumpsuit torn, but her eyes clear and steady, my younger self. She was holding my hand. When had she taken my hand? You're real, I whispered. My voice sounded strange. Thinner. Younger. I'm real, she said. And so are you. Different, but real. I looked down at myself. My armor was gone. My carbine was gone. I was wearing a gray jumpsuit, just like hers. And my hand were younger. Smoother. The scars on my knuckles had faded. What happened to me? I asked. The timeline fixed itself, but you were too important to erase completely. So it folded you back in, gave you a new place, a new history. She smiled, and it was my smile, the one I trained myself out of. You're my sister now. Sister. In a new timeline, we're twins. Separated at birth, reunited as adults. It's not perfect. The memories are fuzzy in places. But it works. She squeezed my hand. You're not the captain anymore, Alex. You're just you. I didn't know how to feel about that. For 12 years, being the captain had been my entire identity. The missions, the team, the weight of command, it was who I was. Without it, who was I? You're the person who saved the timeline, my younger self said, as if reading my thoughts. You're the person who chose to sacrifice herself for people she'd never meet. That doesn't go away just because your rank does. I heard footsteps, running, shouting. Maya burst around a corner, her carbine up, her face a mask of tactical focus. Behind her came Dare, limping but moving fast, and Lena, her jammer forgotten on her back. They skidded to a stop when they saw us. Captain, Maya said. Her voice cracked. Not anymore, I said. Dare stared at me. On my younger face, my gray jumpsuit, my bare feet. What the hell happened to you? The timeline happened. I looked at my younger self. She happened. Maya holstered her carbine and walked toward me slowly, as if approaching a wild animal. When she reached me, she didn't say anything. She just pulled me into a hug. Tight. Desperate. The kind of hug you'd give someone you thought you'd lost forever. I hugged her back, and for the first time in 3 years, I cried. Lena joined the hug. Then Dare. Then my younger self. All of us huddled together in that dying blue light, holding onto each other like the world was ending. It wasn't. The world was beginning. The extraction was quiet after that. We found a service elevator that led to the surface. The void things were gone, dissolved along with the machine, and emerged into a cold, clear night. The rain had stopped. Stars covered the sky like scattered salt. A helicopter waited for us on a nearby ridge. No markings, no insignia. The same gray as the C-130 that had brought us here. The man in the black polo was standing beside it. You did it, he said as we approached. We did it, I corrected. And I have questions. I know. And I have answers. But not here. Not now. He looked at my younger self. Then at me, then back at my younger self. You're both coming with me. There's a lot to explain. And a lot to undo. Undo. Maya stepped forward, her hand on her sidearm. What do you mean, undo? I mean that Prometheus wasn't the only group experimenting with timeline manipulation. They were just the most reckless. There are others. And now that the machine is destroyed, those others are going to notice. They're going to come looking for answers. He looked at me. And they're going to come looking for you. I felt my younger self's hand slip into mine. Her fingers were cold. Mine were colder. Then, we'd better be ready, I said. The helicopter blades began to turn. The wind whipped my hair across my face, my shorter, younger hair. I still wasn't used to it. Probably never would be. We boarded. The team sat together, pressed close against the cold metal walls. My younger self sat across from me, watching me with those clear, steady eyes. What happens now, she asked. I thought about it. About the missions ahead. About the enemies we hadn't faced yet. About the timeline that had tried to erase me and failed. Now, I said, we fight. We protect. We save as many people as we can. And we never let anyone build another machine like that again. That is noted. So Tuesday. Lena laughed. It was a tired laugh, a broken laugh, but it was real. Maya smiled. A rare, genuine smile that softened the hard edges of her face. And my younger self, my sister, my twin, my other self, looked at me and said, teach me. I nodded. I will. The helicopter lifted off. The facility shrank beneath us, a dark scar on the mountain's flank, and then it was gone, swallowed by the night. The stars above us were steady and cold and indifferent to the miracle that had just occurred. I leaned my head back against the metal wall and closed my eyes. The hum of the rotors vibrated through my bones, a familiar comfort. Somewhere below, the timeline was settling into place like fresh concrete. Somewhere behind us, the machine was nothing but rubble and melted circuits. And somewhere inside me, the captain was still there, quieter now, less demanding, but present. She would always be present. The helicopter flew on into the darkness, carrying 5 soldiers and a miracle none of them fully understood. The future was uncertain. The past was rewritten. The present was a gift none of us had expected to receive. I opened my eyes and looked at my team. My family. Good work, I said. Maya nodded. You too, Captain. Not Captain, I said. Just Alex. Dare shook his head. Once a captain, always a captain, even if the timeline disagrees. I didn't argue. I was too tired, too grateful, too aware of the fragile, beautiful impossibility of my own existence. The helicopter banked left, heading for a horizon that held nothing but unknown. And for the first time in a very long time, I was ready to meet it. Not as a soldier, not as a weapon, as a person, as myself, as the girl who saved the world and got to live to tell the story, even if no one would ever believe it, even if I barely believed it myself.